Stories for Boys is a charming and moving coming-of-age story, and its narrator situated in the pivotal position between his father's son and his son's father. The novel, written by local author and UNM English professor Greg Martin, asks the question, how well do we know the people that we think we know best? And we can all ask that question in all of our lives, no matter what the situation.
Absolutely.
And I'm so pleased to welcome Greg Martin, who joins us with more. Hi there, Greg.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Hi.
thank you for sharing your story, not only in your book, but sharing it with us and our viewers today. We
Sure.
appreciate that. And I want to
Thank
just
you.
remind everybody that the story is about your father's coming of age and coming out of the closet
Right.
as a gay man after 39 years of marriage to your mother.
Right.
And this is something a lot of people are going through these days, and something a lot of people don't really talk about so openly. So we really appreciate that. And so I want to know, for you, did you ever sense that there was any kind of a secret life that your dad was living?
I had no idea at all.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that the thing that was the most amazing was that, you know, for my father's basically entire life, since he was about a teenager, he knew he was gay.
Wow.
But he grew up Southern Baptist in Southern Virginia, where that just was not an option.
Not an option.
So he met my mom, and they loved each other. They really hit it off. And even though he'd already had affairs at that point that were anonymous with other men, he thought that this was a chance for happiness for himself.
Wow.
And so he had countless, hundreds really, of anonymous affairs for his entire marriage, the whole time I was growing up.
Wow.
And none of us had any idea.
Including your mother.
Including my mother. In hindsight, I think that now, when looking back, she can say, well, why didn't I say something there? Or what was I thinking? But I think that one of the things that's most astonishing is that he was a fabulous father. You know, really kind, nurturing, generous, and a good husband.
And obviously struggling. Because,
Yeah.
you know, even though he's technically committing adultery by not being faithful,
Right.
he was struggling with something that he thought he
Yeah.
had to deal with, you know, on his own. And that's got to be really scary. So
Yeah.
I'm really curious, how does telling your story to people, how does it relate to other people who have secrets in their own families?
Right. Yeah, you know, what's interesting to me is that as I've gone around promoting the book, I'll give a reading, I'll be signing books, and someone will come up to me and they'll say, I was your mom in your story.
Wow. Oh.
You know, and so it's almost the first thing that people want to talk about. They don't really want to talk about the craft of the book or how did you characterize
Right.
this scene.
You're such a good writer.
Yeah, no, they don't want to talk about that. They really want to talk about their own secrets and their own stories that the book called to their own mind. One really powerful example is that I got an email from a man who was wandering through his bookstore in Greenwich Village.
Okay.
Saw the book, picked it up, didn't really know what it was about, thought, okay, well, I'll get this, I'll go home and read it.
Sure.
It turns out that 41 years ago, when he was 12, his dad had committed suicide because he came out of the closet as a gay man and was caught and succeeded. And so this man had been holding on to this for like 41 years, read this book, and then had, you know, like, got in touch with me, and now we have this kind of correspondence.
Sure, well, you have
So,
something in common, and you
yeah.
can relate to each other, and no matter how many people say they understand, unless they've been through it,
Right.
they really don't.
Yeah.
And so obviously now, after the fact, you're realizing how much you have affected people and how much you've helped people. But
Yeah.
initially, getting the story out there, what compelled you to share such a secret with the world?
Well, I didn't want to. I mean, I think that the thing, you know, was too personal, too raw. I didn't
Sure.
want to expose my own confusion, hurt.
Sure.
And, you know, like, as much as I wanted to sympathize with my dad, the betrayal of my mom and me having to go back through my whole memory of my childhood was really hard. And so I was doing that anyway, but did I have confidence in myself that I could pull it off and share it with the world in a way that would work? Not very much.
Right, I
and
bet.
so that was hard. But in the end, it seemed like every other week there was like some teenage boy was getting bullied or jumped off a
Yes,
bridge
yes.
because they were ashamed of who they were at their core. And I had seen that in my father. My father had always told himself, you know, that if my mom ever found out, he was going to kill himself. She found out, and he did.
My
And
gosh.
so I was so saddened by some of those things. And then on the other hand, I also was really inspired by the marriage equality movement. I was inspired by the It Gets Better project, where Dan Savage and his partner are getting these video testimonials
Yes.
of teenagers, people my age, people my dad's age, saying it gets better. And so I felt like, well, if I'm a writer, I'm not writing very much, because if I were to write anything, I would write this.
Right.
Maybe I should get to work.
Good for you, and thank you for doing that, because I imagine what you hope to gain was exactly what you are gaining, which is getting the word out to people who are struggling as well,
Right.
and giving them that message of hope.
Right.
And you're
Yeah.
really seeing that. So how has it been now for you and your family? Because we're talking a little bit about what's going on with the public and how they're
Sure.
reacting, but how has your family reacted?
Yeah, you know, the person, of course, I think that I was worried about the most was my dad.
Sure.
You know, like, he'd kept this secret for so long. He didn't want to be out. Would he be okay with this?
Mm-hmm.
And he's been phenomenal.
Oh.
You know, like, when I asked him if it was okay for me to do this, he was like, "Son, you wrote this. It's yours."
Oh,
yeah,
I'm
he
so
was
glad to
really,
hear that.
yeah, he was really proud of me. And then I've sent him emails from these kind of folks that I've been getting in touch with saying, "Look at this impact you're having." I got an email from a 20-year-old guy in New Jersey the other day that was like, "It's so nice to see this story, that's not the path for me." And so I think that my dad has seen that it's done some good. My mom, at first, I think it was like this scab that was getting pulled off and bleeding and then
Yes.
rehealing. But at the same time, she's my mom, so she kind of wants it to sell 1 million copies.
Of course.
So, like,
She wants success
she has,
for her son.
yeah. And I think that intellectually she can see the story as being really important, even
Yeah.
though it's painful for her that is her story too.
It's so
And-
unselfish, and that's so
Yeah.
loving and considerate, and I
Yeah.
appreciate that they're being so thoughtful to think not only of you as their son, but also to think of the public and how much it's helping them. And the book is also about sharing all of this with 2 young sons of your own.
Right.
So I'm really curious how that went with them.
Yeah, so that's a major theme arc in the book. At the time that my father attempted suicide and survived, my oldest was 7 and my youngest was 4.
Oh, wow.
And so we weren't going to talk about attempted suicide with them. But after about a year or so into the process, you know, my mom was visiting, and then 3 or 4 months later my dad was visiting. Why? What just happened with these
Right.
people who were really loving? And so trying to explain to them about the fact that their grandparents had split up was really painful.
Sure.
Some of the other stuff that's darker, the book is like a time capsule for them. You know, like, when you're older, when you're 16 or 17, this book's going to be there for you. You're going to be able to see all of this. And so my hope is that will give them even more insight
Yeah.
into what's happened.
Well, we appreciate you sharing it, and I just want to mention real quickly that there is a book signing tomorrow,
Right.
and that's going to be at Barnes & Noble at Coronado Center in Albuquerque, and of course a great day to get out, a lot of people shopping, and really
Yeah.
a great gift for people as well. We always like to get books that not only tell interesting stories, but tell informative, helpful stories, and we appreciate
Yeah.
you. Thank you
so much. Thanks for
Greg.
having me on.
It was great to meet you, and
Yeah.
you don't want to go away, because still ahead on New Mexico Style, we've got a lot more for you, how to winterize your pet. But first, Christmas carols from the Albuquerque High School Choir.
Hark how the bells, sweet silver bells, all seem to say, throw cares away. Christmas is here, bringing good cheer to young and old, big and little. Ding dong ding dong, God is home, ding joyful ring, all caroling. One seems to hear words of good cheer from everywhere, filling the air. Oh,